think even from BJ's day that you're always trying to integrate the knowledge as it becomes available. You know, I mean, he had medical doctors. I mean, he had the latest equipment. X-ray was one of the first, and you know, the other things that he had to analyze and do better work. For me, and I can only speak for myself, I think I always had that vitalistic philosophy. That's what was attractive as well to me, chiropractic. But I think I had it before, you know, chiropractic, and I lived my life that way. So, you know, I know how important that is to me. So as this new knowledge comes in, I'm always trying to integrate it in a way that makes sense with that philosophy for me, you know. And I'm not too big on technologies that I don't understand, you know, not to say that they're not good, but I'm not one to, you know, jump on any new thing just because, you know, even because it may work. You know, I like to understand things and know that, you know, it's going to be good for the body, and, you know, from that perspective of health and vitalism and all of that. So, you know, I mean, and that's just me. The body doesn't lie, for one thing. You know, it's always the truth, and that's what I love about how you work, and you know, because a lot of the knowledge you get comes from the body. You know, and in nature, you know, we say the body, we say nature. It's the same thing, and nature doesn't lie. You know, there's principles that hold up no matter what you do. You know, no matter what kind. You know, if you plant a seed, you're going to get, you know, a certain tree or plant or whatever. It's never going to be different. You know, it's just these concepts that hold up. So, you know, that to me is how I like to kind of run things by before I take them in as beliefs. You know, it's how they hold up. It's just the way I eat. You know, my nutrition, my diet. I do like a vegan live food diet, and you know, and that for me that kind of fits in with my philosophy. If I look in you know, how we're designed, how nature is, and you know, you talk about a symbiotic relationship. If I was walking outside in the woods and, you know, I saw a red apple on a tree, and the smell drew me near, the color drew me near, I could reach up and it would fit right in my hand. I could pull it off. It would taste delicious. I would eat it. The seeds would go in me. I may walk off. Those seeds would pass through me with fertilizer. I would get another apple tree. You know, so it's a sustainable cycle of, you know, something very natural. Versus, you know, if I'm walking on the beach and I see a fish flopping around on the beach, I mean, that's not going to be really attractive to me. And, you know, if I go to pick it up, even if I could pick it up, I mean, there's scales on it, and that I'm going to need to bite through, and it's alive, and, you know, taste, and it just, so, I mean, just in a sensible way, you know, looking at nature, you know, you make a decision based on what I should eat. You know, and I try to do that as much as I can with everything that I, you know, bring into my life. The things that excite me now are, you know, integrating the neurology, but in a very, in a real respectful way, you know, in working with people, and I love, you know, having taught your work. I love that approach in terms of the level of respect and working with the body and movement and the whole tensegrity model. So, you know, I love the idea of, you know, integrating the two. It's like the more you know, the whole less is better thing, and just being more, you know, when you're really specific and you know the body well, how you can do much less and get much more. I mean, that whole approach in terms of, you know, integrating the neurology into that approach. Even now, you know, with the technology, I tend to work at getting good, almost like the country doctor with, you know, there's different technology you can bring in with the neurology to observe things, but I find that if you learn how to observe them without that technology, you know, it just brings a whole another level of presence in how you can assess.
Absolutely.
And not that that is bad, not that I wouldn't use that stuff, and it's very valuable, but just kind of developing along those lines of, just being able to be really present with people and, what is needed at the time. A neuron basically needs certain things to survive. It's real simple, just like we do: oxygen, nutrients, and activation. And if a person's system, a nervous system, or the person in general is compromised, it may be that because of lack of some of those things. So in the nervous system, when a neuron is compromised, it's not getting enough of any of those things, then it can actually it can die off. But first, what happens is it becomes closer to threshold, and it does that because the activation is so important that it wants to fire easily in order to survive. So it becomes closer to threshold, closer to firing point. So any stimulus now is going to fire it, very quickly, but it's going to fatigue right away because it doesn't have what it takes to sustain it. And so, when you're dealing with somebody in that state, that's metabolic capacity is compromised, and you put an input into the system, whether it's an adjustment or whatever, you have to be real careful because you want to bring activation, you want to stimulate that so it becomes stronger, because it becomes stronger, then it's going to build more proteins, it's going to get stronger, it's going to, the cell, it's going to do all the things it needs to do to develop more synapses, connections, whatever it needs to do. But if the stimulus is too much, then it can actually kill the neuron. So, that's why it's so important that the input be in line with that person's metabolic capacity, that nervous system's metabolic capacity, to be able to give enough stimulus to where it can get stronger, the system can improve without, doing detriment to the system. And so you can do the right thing, but you can just do too much of it.
Right.
And then it's not right. And the classic example is the person that goes into the gym to work out, that's way out of shape, that hasn't worked out, and they go in and they just do so much that they're just so sore they never want to work out again, and they tore their muscles down so much that they're just not going to recuperate and get stronger. They're actually going to get weaker, and overtraining is the term. And it's that same idea in the nervous system where you really have to always respect that, the metabolic capacity. And the thing that's great about the neurology, the functional neurology, is that you can measure that now by looking at these parameters. So, for instance, if you shine a light in a pupil, and one pupil constricts nice and smoothly and holds nicely, and then you shine a light in the other pupil, and it constricts fast and feels fast, well, there's a difference going on from side to side, and you can see the metabolic capacity in this one that feel quickly, it didn't have the ability to hold, is compromised. And you can measure that, and you can do something, whether it's an adjustment, change nutrition, whatever it is you do. And now you can remeasure, or you do an adjustment, you can measure it right away, you can shine the light in again, and now if that pupil holds better and stronger and longer, you've just affected that metabolic capacity, that pathway. And you can do that with all these other parameters. Just like you make an adjustment and blood pressure gets better, you've affected the sympathetic nervous system or autonomic nervous system that way. So I think we look at these things in chiropractic. A lot of times doing an exam, we most of us take blood pressure and whatnot, but we don't always relate them and measure them in terms of how we affect them. And you go way back, and BJ tried to do that stuff, which is really cool, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He was looking at that back then. But I think at a period of time we got away from that, and as the knowledge comes in, especially in neurology, there's more we know about the nervous system and the brain in probably the last 10 years than we did in the whole history of what we know. So that's exciting, and as we integrate that in more, I think it'll be pretty good for what we do.